Welcome into Sports Memo's Betting Podcast, XFL Edition, the best XFL Edition podcast out there. Rob Veno, our XFL expert. Welcome in, buddy. How you doing today?
I am doing good, Drew, and we're going to cool it on the XFL expert because we got ripped for that last week, and maybe rightfully so. After 2 weeks, we don't want to be labeled as experts, but certainly following it as intensely as I would follow anything else, and it paid dividends last week. 3 out of 4 client plays win, a couple of best bets win. Stuff that we talked about came to fruition on last week's show. And we do this early in the week, Drew. You and I were talking off air. We do this on Tuesday afternoons where there's not a ton of weekly updated information available to us. So we're giving you the best we can at the given time, and we'll even, like last week, give you a best bet at the end of the show. But certainly, after 3 weeks, still into it, and I think things are loosening up a little bit offensively now. We see a couple offenses getting going here.
Yeah, for sure, Robbie. And talk about the first game up. In last week's podcast, we both talked about Los Angeles being at home, catching points, maybe being a side, came to fruition last week. Now they're going on the road cross country here. We're talking Los Angeles Wildcats at the New York Guardians. First game up here, top of the rotation, 4-2-5, 4-2-6, 2 o'clock kickoff. We got -7 here. That's LA laying on the road, 39.5 being the total. New York Guardians, tough time out the gate here, Robbie, but you interested in getting involved in this first game up, XFL Week 4?
Yeah, for New York, Drew, we saw last week. I think it was to be expected heading into St. Louis. We talked about how loud that dome would be, how intense the fan base would be. St. Louis really wanting to welcome football back to their city in any capacity. They got it, and the Battlehawks got off to a great start, got off to a big lead, and held on. I'll tell you what's crazy, Drew, is when you get involved, like I did last week with St. Louis, and you're laying 9.5, 10 points. Boy, you better have a huge lead. This is not like the NFL. You better have a 28-point lead in order to feel safe, because the back door is constantly wide open in this league. Last week, New York put things together offensively in the fourth quarter, drove down the field, got a touchdown. After driving right down the field and being turned away on 4th and goal, they actually could have scored twice and ruined things for a St. Louis cover. And that lead felt as comfortable as any lead you could possibly imagine. So big point spread games, just for those out there, beware with these 2-point and 3-point conversions. Things can get a little crazy, and your seemingly comfortable bet can turn into a loser real quick. It didn't happen that way last week. St. Louis held on. For New York, Drew, the quarterback controversy starts here now. Matt McGloin got hurt last week, rib injury. Didn't play the second half. Marquise Williams, ex-North Carolina quarterback, came in, played a little bit. He's got the running element, but didn't really have the passing game down. They didn't really attempt much downfield. Luis Perez, quarterback from the Alliance of American Football, came in, led a touchdown drive, and looked halfway decent. So we'll see who they go with here. LA broke out last week. Thus, they're a 7-point favorite. Again, I think they're overvalued. These lines are quickly adjusted, and they're strongly adjusted. This is something we talked about in 3 or 4 games last week. Depending upon what numbers you got, you could have won 2 out of 3 with home underdogs. Seattle, I think, being the only one that wouldn't have covered. But my power ratings, and believe me, I'm adjusting the same way that week to week as odds makers are, but I list this game as pick'em, Drew, and they're laying 7 points. To me, it seems a very, very heavy. The temperatures will be a little bit colder here in New York this week. When LA comes cross country to play this game, an 11 a.m. kickoff for their time, Pacific time, it's going to be around 35 degrees. LA hasn't played in that cold element yet. Not so sure that it'll affect them, but just wanted to point that out. As we sit right now, I would think New York, as disastrous as they have looked, plus 7 points might be a decent way to go.
Yeah, it's the top of the card here. I'm with you, Robbie. I mean, laying a full touchdown on the road against a New York team with at least the running element likely added this time. I'm just not interested in laying points unless I'm really, really confident in the team doing well on the road, cross-country here like we talked about. I'm with you, looking towards the dog here. We're talking with Robbie Veno on Twitter, at Rob Veno Sports. I'm Drew Martin on Twitter, at Drew Martin Bets. The two XFL handicappers here, sportsmemo.com. So we got the full season packages up at sportsmemo.com. You can use coupon code XFL at checkout for both of them. For $100 off there, try it out, sportsmemo.com. Get you all the way throughout the championship game here in the XFL. Every play release, $100 off. Coupon code XFL at checkout. It's also $2 Tuesday, guys. Check it out, sportsmemo.com. We got Teddy Covers top play for $2. And when you buy that play, you get Robbie Veno's crossover play tonight, his top play tonight, and you will get it for a huge discount. So check that out there at sportsmemo.com. Also, $2 Tuesday at wagertalk.com for a 5% NHL play. If you're an NHL bettor, check it out at wagertalk.com as well. We got second game up here on Saturday, Robbie, 5 o'clock. Kickoff, Seattle Dragons at St. Louis Battlehawks. And St. Louis catching a bid here, Robbie. Open -8 and a hook. We're seeing it as high as -13 right now offshore. 38.5 being the total. Low total here. I think it speaks to, Seattle's offense, man. They haven't been pretty of late, Robbie. And talking about their quarterback room, I kind of overestimated it. I thought that they would be a little bit better here. Brandon Silvers coming from Troy. He had a great college football career. It's not really translating to the professional ranks in St. Louis. In my opinion, they could win it all, Robbie. They're good. They're really good, and being at home, I mean, that St. Louis crowd really affected it last week. I could see it happening again here. I know it's a large number, but it is a home team, and this St. Louis team might be the best team in the XFL. I would look towards St. Louis -12 here.
Yeah, it's a lot of points, Drew. And as I just pointed out, as bad as New York was last week in this same building, they had a legitimate chance at the end to cover as a 10-point underdog closing line. Seattle has to rate better than New York despite their problems. We talked about Brandon Silvers last week, just the inconsistency. And I got so frustrated last week that I had to go to Twitter with Brandon Silvers negativity. But it's not all negative with him. I mean, there are times when he shows flashes, threading needles, perfect passes. You know what? He's just good enough, Drew. He's just good enough to drive you from your own 20 to the other team's 20, and then something fails along the way, and he makes a miserable pass. Jim Zorn actually counseled him on the sidelines after an interception last week, a really poor pass behind the receiver right to the defender on what could have been a promising drive. If you could get anything out of this guy for 4 quarters as far as consistency is concerned, then you would have, I think, what maybe you and a lot of others thought this Seattle Dragons team could be to start the season. Right now at 1-2, they're not out of anything, but they need that consistency, and they need the wide receiving core. It was pointed out last week, and really, once I looked at it, correctly pointed out that Seattle doesn't have a guy to take the top off the defense at the wide receiver position. Keenan Reynolds, not necessarily a burner, the ex-Navy quarterback. Austin Prohl, more of a route runner, not a burner. And what happened to Seattle last week was Dallas figured it out and just crowded the line of scrimmage. Everybody came down within 8 yards of the line, and Seattle, with that short passing game, it just wasn't working. It couldn't generate any consistent offense. So, they scored 12 in the first half. They don't score on any of their last 7 drives in that game. Meanwhile, they hold Dallas. The defense played good in front of the home crowd, but then Dallas, in typical Dallas form, the last 2 weeks explodes in the second half. I think they scored on 4 of their last 5 drives. So for Seattle, another loss and non-cover. They're kind of on the verge, Drew. I don't know what to do with them. I can see an offensive outburst coming with Silvers if he can get it going consistently, but it's hard to project that. I'm going to give you some numbers here of why Seattle's been so good this season. Seattle opponents on third down conversions this year, and these aren't skewed by one game. Every game they've been good at this, but their opponents have converted 5 of 30 third down conversions. 5 of 30. 16.7% on third downs. Dallas 1 of 10. Houston 2 of 10. New York 2 of 10. Those are their 3 opponents 3 weeks in a row. Very good defensively on third down. Meanwhile, offensively, they're the best in the league. 24 out of 45 third down conversions successful for this team. 53.3. That's a huge number when you're talking about third down conversions. You don't see that often unless it's a really strong college football team. 53.3 success rate, 6 of 12 against Dallas, 11 of 19 versus Houston, 7 of 14 last week versus New York. Boy, that's where St. Louis is making their money right now, Drew, on third down. It's an important down. I just don't know. As much as I like them, and I've liked them since the outset, this St. Louis team, when odds makers didn't, certainly the futures board didn't, but I don't know if I could get their laying this many points. I'd almost tend to look at this total being slightly low, considering the fact that last week, New York and Seattle got the 38 points. New York and St. Louis got the 38 points, and I consider Seattle's offense better than New York's.
Yeah, that's interesting that this total is so low. But what do you think about this Battlehawks defense, Robbie? How good are they really? Because you're right. I mean, they did let their opponent kind of slip back in, but they still hung on to the cover. How would you rate St. Louis's defense?
Overall, Drew, total yardage-wise, it hasn't been terrific, but they made the stops at the right time, just like we laid out there with the third down conversion stuff. Because if I go to the first game against Dallas completes 34 out of 43 passes against this defense, and that was not with Landry Jones. That was with Philip Nelson. 34 of 43, 79% completions. They allowed 267 yards in that game. Against Houston, they did a pretty good job bottling up Houston aside from the big plays, but the big plays, in essence, have hurt St. Louis a little bit so far this year. And then, of course, last week with the big lead, New York had 3 successful drives in a row in the second half, only turned into 1 touchdown. So I think they're good when they need to be good, but they're not dominating good. Brandon Silvers, just give us something. And one other thing to note here, Drew, when you're laying big price with the St. Louis Battlehawks, I think they're now 1 of 7 on extra points.
Yeah.
They finally converted an extra point last week. They were 0 for up until their final touchdown against New York. So they're not real good in that area. And if you're going to lay 12.5, 13, boy, you better get some 2 points, some 1 points, get something after the touchdown instead of just those plain 6s. So we'll see.
He's Robbie Veno. Guys, $2 Tuesday, sportsmemo.com. Check it out. Teddy covers top play. Also, $2 Tuesday at wagertalk.com for NHL 5% play. We got Sunday's action now. 2 games, Robbie. First game up, 4 o'clock kickoff here. Houston, Roughnecks, Dallas, Renegades. This is top game of the weekend here. Top game, really, of the season so far. Houston -1 on the road. We're seeing 49 or 50 being the total. This is Houston at Dallas, Robbie. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this is, like you say, Drew, the game of the season so far. There's no question about it. These are the 2 best teams. I thought they were last week heading in. You could have argued Washington, but then we saw Washington, D.C. get dismantled. So perhaps they are not one of the 2 best. Right now, I talked about Brandon Silver's consistency. I sometimes get those 2 when you're watching them all weekend long. 2 number 12s built exactly the same. You get them a little bit mixed up, but he's had the same inconsistencies that Silvers has had. Drew, second halves have been great for Landry Jones the last 2 weeks. And, of course, I think you could write off a lot of this to rust, a guy who hadn't played in 177 days coming off an injury. But the second halves have been dynamite. They didn't even utilize the running game as much as they did the week before against Los Angeles in the second half. They really went to the passing attack. Run some passing numbers by you where Hal Mummy's offense is concerned so far this year. 92 of 124 total. Best completion percentage in the league for 798 yards. They're completing passes each and every week, whether they be dink and dunk, not so many downfield, and that's mainly because Landry Jones has underthrown or overshot a lot of open guys downfield. To their positive side, Donald Parem, the tight end, number 49, for those who have been watching, virtually a giant on the field compared to the people covering him. He's about 6'6", 6'7". He's been a great find for Dallas and a really good security blanket. It'll be tough for Houston to deal with. What'll be tough for Dallas to deal with will be P.J. Walker. I know you talked about him last week, Drew. He's been great as a dual threat, and it just makes that June Jones offense that much more explosive. He made a couple of plays, touchdown plays, out of nothing last week. For those of you who watched, you probably saw he was being chased, just about sacked, launched a ball downfield to a wide-open Cam Phillips. It looked like he was going to try and turn the corner and run, Walker I'm speaking of here, and the defense sort of came off Phillips and came up to stop him from running over their heads, touchdown. And then another play, shotgun snap, got right past him, turned around, ran it down, picked it up, and then ran it right in the end zone around the corner. So 2 plays that probably shouldn't have gone for positives went for touchdowns. That's what you're dealing with when you have Houston here. Cam Phillips has been the best receiver in the league by far. The Houston pass rush has been really good. Both of these teams, Drew, at this point in time, like I say, rank 1 and 2. Dallas gets a little home field advantage here. The point spread is virtual pick'em at this point. I think I saw -1, maybe to the home side. I can't remember now. But at any rate, I would look for points in this game. I think the offenses are the stalwarts in this contest, and it's going to be pretty difficult for either side to stop them. Houston, 3 games, 3 overs. I think this total sits at 50. Again, you need some 2-point conversions, but we saw some creativity out of some teams last week where 2-point conversions are concerned, extra point conversions are concerned of any value. And I think we'll continue to see that as the season goes on. So for me, I'd probably look toward over in that game.
All right, we got one game left here, guys. The nightcap on Sunday. DC Defenders go on the road again, this time down to the state of Florida, take on the Tampa Bay Vipers. And they are the slight road favorites here. 1 and a hook, -1.5 down there in Tampa. 44.5 being the total here. Robbie, what are you thinking with DC and Tampa?
Well, you wonder what the bounce back will be, Drew, out of the Defenders. I mean, they got scorched last week, and in every department from the get-go. I mean, the game got out of hand, and Washington did pile up some rushing yards. This team ran for 200 yards last week against LA, which is a little different than what the narrative was about this team. Was Cardale Jones and a great receiving core, and last week they ran real well, but Cardale Jones did not look good. And he faced a secondary, Drew, that was out without 2 starting cornerbacks. They had backups at both corners, and they picked him off, I think, 4 times. It's the highest number of turnovers committed by a
4.
team so far this season. I think they had 5 total turnovers in that game. So it just wasn't good. He did not look like he was sure of himself in any way, shape, or form. What will the bounce back be? I don't know. But I know one thing. Tampa Bay was not going to go over in the red zone forever. And last week they broke out in a pretty big way. They played Houston toe-to-toe.
I know.
34-27. Depending upon where you got the number, you could have covered with Tampa Bay. You could have covered with Houston. I think that thing moved from an opener of 4 all the way to 8 where it closed. The Tampa Bay quarterback situation is in flux right now. We don't know the injury situation on Aaron Murray, who's missed the last 2 games. You got a lot of Taylor Cornelius, the ex-Oklahoma State quarterback, and you got a little of Quentin Flowers. And I think the fans want to see more of Quentin Flowers, to tell you the truth.
That was fun to see. It was a bunch of USF fans chanting his name and everything.
And while he was in, he looked pretty good. He brings an added dimension to the team. But I think where the playbook is concerned, you kind of heard Mark Trestman describe it. Right before half, they lifted Flowers on a 2-minute situation and put Cornelius in, and he led the team down to a touchdown. They just thought Cornelius had a better grip on the 2-minute offense. It could be all situational once again this week for both of these guys. But their offense is pretty good, Drew. It just didn't get into the end zone those first 2 weeks. They did stuff like, I think they're the team that ran the reverse on the kickoff, or maybe it was Houston. I forget which. It was in that game, I think. They ran a reverse on the kickoff for a touchdown, ran it all the way back. A very crazy 2-point conversion play that Tampa Bay ran. There was a lot of innovation with this team last week that I like to see. I think they're pretty well balanced. Defensively, they're not great, but they're good enough. I mean, the first 2 weeks, they were more than good enough. Last week, they got, hit for over 400 yards by Houston, but that's Houston. And like I said earlier, Houston made a couple plays out of nothing that went for big touchdowns. I think Tampa Bay is the right way here. I just don't know that I believe enough or as much in Washington, D.C. as others do. For me right now, Tampa Bay could have some home momentum. And I don't really care which quarterback it is this week. I'd almost prefer at this point to see the Cornelius Flowers duo in the game. It presents a harder challenge for defenses to have those guys coming in and out of games because they have different skill sets. But if it's Aaron Murray, then it's Aaron Murray. I still think Tampa's got the better team here. So for me, I'll take the home side, Tampa Bay.
I'm with you. I think the home team is the side in this one as well, Robbie. And I agree with you. I think Cornelius and Quentin Flowers kind of switching off. It keeps the defense on their heels a little bit, and it makes it a lot of fun for the fans there. So Robbie Veno, guys, check him out on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. Check him out at sportsmemo.com. Got the full season XFL up there. Check it out for Robbie Veno or Drew Martin. He's also got a free play up. We got best bets coming up. But, guys, the coupon code for the podcast, XFL, will take $100 off full season XFL service for Rob Veno, Drew Martin, or both. You can double up. Double dipping is okay on the coupon code there, XFL. So, Robbie, throw it over to you, man. Do you have a best bet for the podcast this weekend in the XFL?
Yeah. As we sit, Drew, once again, Tuesday afternoon. Early afternoon where you are, late afternoon where I am, but still Tuesday afternoon nonetheless. And with the information that we have to go on right now, I would probably lean toward Houston and Dallas getting over that 50 points. I think that's going to be an up and down game. Dallas throws the ball consistently. Houston throws the ball consistently. You have June Jones against Hal Mummy, two very explosive offenses, and they both have running games to go with it. So we'll see if they can make enough conversion plays, because that's really what this comes down to in this league. We talked early, preseason, about how there are no key numbers. Throw those in the garbage. So 50, there's nothing key about it. But I just think you're asking both teams to go 25-25 to push. I think that's more than doable. So give me over 50 as the early week best bet in the XFL.
I like it, Robbie. I like that play as well. So, guys, we got the over, Houston, Dallas. Over 50 is market wide, but, Robbie, low water mark here. We got a bookmaker laying of 49, so we can give you the 49, man.
Mm-hmm. We'll take it.
All right. So
we're always out looking for that edge, right, Drew?
Well, might as well, man. Heck, it lands on 50. You get to cash instead of push. Mm-hmm. So, Houston, Dallas, over 49. That's what we're seeing right now, guys. 2 o'clock Pacific, Tuesday afternoon. Robbie, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
Yeah, you were talking about the packages for the season, Drew. I mean, these tickets cash just the same as any others do. And right now, I still think I think we proved it last week, Drew. There's still plenty of being ahead of the curve in this league. While some are zigging, others are zagging. And for us last week, it paid off. I think it can pay off again this week. I don't know that odds makers have a firm handle. I don't know that they care to have a firm handle on this league, tell you the truth, with March Madness and everything coming up here. So season packages, absolutely. Would have brought you home good profit last week. So go ahead and sign up because, like I say, these tickets cash just the same as, I don't know, betting cricket in Bangladesh. They all count the same.
They do. NFL sides, XFL totals, XFL sides, whatever you want to bet, they do cash the same. And, Robbie, I would actually say they could even cash better because it's a more inefficient market. There's less for the odds makers to go off of. So I that's why I'm pouring a lot of time into the XFL. And, guys, hopefully you're following along. Houston, Dallas, over 49, best bet for the podcast. Check out season packages here in the XFL for myself, Drew Martin, and Robbie Veno. And you can get it for $100 off for the next 48 hours using the coupon code XFL at checkout. So, Robbie, thanks for the time, man. And next Tuesday, same time, same place. How about it?
Always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for having me. We'll go at it again next week.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and best of luck with your bets.